In this video, I want to take you through a full financial plan for a client that has about $1.8 million and is planning on retiring in a couple of years. And make sure you watch until the end because I want to show you how just changing a couple of things can really help his retirement and make it possible in the year that he wants to retire. So you'll hear me talk about a couple of different things, and one of those is goals. So the most important thing when you're doing financial planning is what are your goals? What do you want your money to accomplish for you? So we're going to talk about this client's goals, him and his wife, as well as what those priorities are, because you might have something in your mind that is a priority, or not a priority, and it's important to find the balance between those. Because if, for instance, you have an idea that maybe you want to have a vacation home, but it's more important for you to retire at a certain age, well, then you want to know what those priorities are, because sometimes buying a vacation home today could push back retirement by 5 years. And if you want to buy a vacation home when you retire, it could also have the same effect, and maybe you wouldn't be able to retire at that time. So let's dig into it. And I'm going to go through every piece of the financial plan and how it might impact his overall ability to hit his goals. So let's take a look at the client that we're going to talk about today. So Henry and Maddie, and of course, names have been changed for confidentiality and numbers have been changed for ease of presentation. But Henry and Maddie, Henry was born in 1962, so he's 62 years old. And Maddie was born in 1959, so she's 65 years old. So let's take a look at their goals. Henry and Maddie both want to retire at 66 years old. Now, Maddie's a little bit older, so she'll be retiring a few years before Henry, but they both want to spend $150,000 a year after tax in retirement. So that's just money going out the door after tax, not taking into account any money that's coming in the door from Social Security or pensions to cover that amount. Typically, we decrease the spending by 15% when one spouse is no longer living, to account for less clothes, less food, and a number of other expenses that may not be present anymore after one spouse predeceases the other. So after Henry's gone, the expenses would go down to 127,000. Healthcare is another expense that we have to account for. So Henry and Maddie said they want to spend 150,000. They're not thinking about the cost of Medicare or Medicare Part D, or maybe Medigap or Medicare supplemental policy, as well as some out-of-pocket expenses. So let's add something for that to account for healthcare expenses. And also, healthcare is going to inflate at a higher rate. So historically, healthcare is inflated at a higher rate. So let's account for that in the financial plan. Now, they also want to travel. They want to travel at $25,000 a year, and that's every year from the time that Henry retires. They also want to buy a vacation home in 2026. So they want to buy a vacation home with $400,000 in cash, and they also want to leave an estate to the kids at $500,000. So with all that being said, that is what they want their money to accomplish for them. So as I mentioned before, it's important to really understand, what do they want their money to accomplish for them? And then let's figure out how to accomplish those goals, or at least give us a high enough probability of hitting those goals that they can feel comfortable going into retirement. So let's look at some of their various income sources in retirement. So remember, Henry is a higher income earning spouse. So in this scenario, we're recommending that Henry file at 70 so that he could get delayed retirement credits. But Maddie has a working history of her own, so she can file at her full retirement age and get some benefit. Now, remember, Henry has to have filed in order for Maddie to get her spousal benefit, because she can't receive her spousal benefit, which is 50% of Henry's primary insurance amount or full retirement age benefit. Maddie can't get her spousal benefit until Henry has filed. In this case, Henry is waiting till 70 to file to get his delayed retirement credits. So Maddie, when she files, is going to get her benefit. In this case, it's $12,000 a year. So when she files at 66 in 10 months, she's going to get $12,000 a year. So here you can see the illustration of Maddie filing early, and she's older than Henry. So she's going to file early and sort of get the best of both worlds because she's going to be able to file and get some benefit and then still jump up to the higher benefit when Henry files. So she'll still be able to take her spousal benefit. So you can see these numbers here based on 12,000. And of course, they're adjusted for inflation because Social Security typically applies a COLA or a cost of living adjustment to your Social Security benefit. So each year it goes up a little bit. And then when Henry files, so Henry files for his delayed retirement credits at age 70, Maddie will switch to her spousal benefit. So she'll get half of whatever Henry's primary insurance amount was, or 50% of whatever his full retirement age benefit was if he were to have taken it at full retirement age. So from that point forward, Maddie will continue to get her spousal benefit rather than her benefit based on her working history. Now, this is going to continue on. Henry getting his higher benefit with delayed retirement credits, Maddie getting her higher benefit based on her spousal benefit until Henry passes away. Now, remember, survivor benefits is based on 100% of the higher benefit between the two. So the surviving spouse, gets 100% of whatever the higher benefit was at the time one spouse predeceases the other. In this case, Henry had the higher benefit. So when he predeceases Maddie, Maddie's benefit goes away and she assumes Henry's benefit. So her benefit, then survivor benefit, would jump up to whatever Henry was getting when he died, and her benefit would go away. So now let's take a look at Henry and Maddie's other sources of income in retirement. So Henry has a pension. He's one of the few that has a pension from a previous employer. In this case, it's $9,000. So when we look at pensions, in this case, it's also 100% survivor benefit. Now, when people that have a pension benefit available to them, oftentimes they're going to have the ability to choose from a single life annuity, 50% survivor benefit, 75%, or even 100% joint survivor benefit. And it's very important to take into consideration the benefit and the protection that it provides to a potential surviving spouse. So you have to look at what that single life annuity benefit is versus the 100% joint survivor, and really consider, is it going to be beneficial? Is it enough money to take the single life annuity versus the 100% survivor benefit? Because if you take a single life annuity and that annuitant, that primary annuitant, in this case Henry, dies the day after he starts receiving it, then Maddie would get nothing. If he took 100% survivor benefit and he died right after taking it, then Maddie would get 100% of that benefit. Right? So that's something to take into consideration. Many times we're going to recommend that somebody take 100% survivor benefit because it provides more protection to the surviving spouse. In this case, it's only $9,000. Sometimes pensions can be $25,000, $50,000, even $100,000. And so it's important to figure out how much that benefit actually affects the plan and affects your ability to hit your financial goals. Now, the other thing to look out for when you think about pension benefits is the cost of living adjustment. Now, most pension benefits don't have a COLA or cost of living adjustment. However, more recently, I've seen a couple of different pension benefits that have what's called a COLA buy-up, where you take a lesser amount today, but it does allow for a cost of living adjustment. And if you run the numbers, and I'm not saying it's the same on every plan, but it's important to look into it and ask the questions, because if you run the numbers and it allows for it to go up by a certain amount every year, or even has a base amount that it will go up every year, it could be a very powerful income source if it actually adjusts on an annual basis. So it may be worth taking that lower amount. Now, most of the times, if you read the fine print, most pensions don't have a cost of living adjustment, but it is something to take into consideration. So now let's take a look at their investment accounts. So Henry has a $800,000 401k at work, and he is saving $44,300 a year. Now, he can't save himself 44,300 a year. He's saving the maximum, which is 30,000 a year because it's 23,000 plus you get a $7,000 catch up if you're over the age of 50. So he's saving 30,000 a year. Then he has a match from the employer. So this match and most matches are similar. A lot of times you'll see 100% for the first 4% of your salary. Sometimes it's mixed up into 100% for the first three and then 50% for the next two. It's just a fancy way of saying if you save five, they'll give you four, right? So you're still getting 4% of your salary if you're maxing out. And then some very generous employers will save even more or give you profit sharing as well, which would be in addition to the match. In this case, he's getting 100% of the first 4% of his salary that he saves. And that gets him up to 44,300. In addition to their pre-tax savings, they're also saving into a joint investment account. And they're saving $75,000 a year into that joint investment account where they already have 750,000 saved. So for the rest of their working years, they're going to be saving 119,300 a year. So every year that they work, they're putting an additional 119,000 in. So think about that. They're at 1.8 million today. Working another 3 years, they could be over 2.1 million with no growth in the portfolio. So those working years can make a big difference. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about his retirement age. So now let's take a look at some of their other assets and also asset sales, because that's important as part of their retirement. So right now the couple has two homes. They have one home in Florida and one home in Georgia. They're actually spending more than 6 months out of the year in Florida so that they don't have to pay state income tax. Now their home in Florida is worth $700,000 and their home in Georgia is worth $930,000. And they don't have any debt on that home. Now, the home in Georgia, they plan on selling in retirement. So let's take a look at what happens when they sell the home, because it's important to take into consideration all of the different moving parts and also some misconceptions about what happens when you sell a home. So they paid $430,000 for the home. That's their cost basis, right? When they sell the home, they're going to have to pay a 6% sales expense, right? They're going to have to pay the agent, both on the buying side and the selling side, that 6% fee. Now, there's always the possibility that they negotiate something different, or maybe their agent is both the buying and selling agent, and they're able to get it for 5%. There's a number of different reasons why this may be less, but let's be conservative and assume that it's 6% for the sake of this example. So they're going to have to pay $55,800 for the sale price. So you may be asking the question, well, what about taxes, right? They paid $430,000 for the house. They paid $430,000 and now they're selling it for $930,000. What about the $500,000 gain? And you're right, there is a gain. However, there's something called the 2 of 5 rule, whereby if you've lived in a house 2 years out of the last 5 years, you are exempt from taxes up to $250,000 per spouse. So in this case, Henry and Maddie have a $500,000 exemption in the sale of this home because it was counted as a primary home. They've lived in it 2 of the last 5 years, and they will be exempt from the taxes of the sale of this home because it's a $500,000 gain and they have a $500,000 exemption. So they pay 0 taxes and they should net $874,000 in proceeds, which they can then use for their retirement. So at Henry's retirement, they will sell the home in Georgia. They'll net $874,000 and they will go live in the home in Florida full time. So now let's see if the financial plan works, right? Let's see if Maddie and Henry can both retire at 66. Of course, Maddie's going to retire a little bit earlier. They're going to sell their home in Georgia, move to Florida, buy a vacation home for $400,000. They're going to spend $150,000 a year, as well as $25,000 a year on travel. And they want to leave a $500,000 estate. right? So let's see if it works, and see if it doesn't work, what type of adjustments need to be made in order to reach their goals. So this is a tool called Monte Carlo simulation, and it takes 1,000 different possibilities of what could happen during Henry and Maddie's lifetime, and it comes up with a probability of success of reaching their goals. So if we get a 90% probability of success, it means that only 100 trials out of 1,000 ran out of money before the end of their life. If we get a 10% probability of success, it means that 900 trials ran out of money before the end of their lifetime. So here's the 1,000 trials, and based on all of their goals, they have a 50% probability of success. So that means that 500 trials ran out of money before their lifetime. That means 500 trials did not run out of money before the end of their lifetime. But where we like to see people is what's called the confidence zone, which means that the probability isn't too high, it's not too low, but it's just right, right? They're not sacrificing too much today for tomorrow, right? They're not holding back too much, not going on any trips, working until 75. They're not holding back too much, but they're also not sacrificing too much tomorrow for today, right? They're not spending $50,000 a year when they want to spend 150. They're not spending $5,000 a year on travel when they want to spend 25, right? So let's find the happy medium. How can we get them in the confidence zone? So we looked at a couple different scenarios and we really focused on their priorities. What is important to them, right? Going back to the original question, what do they want their money to accomplish for them? Well, they want all of these things, but what's more important? Right? Is it more important for them to buy a vacation home for $400,000, or is it more important for them to leave an estate to their children, a liquid estate to their children, right? And so for Henry and Maddie, it was really important for them to leave an estate to their children, right? It was more important for them to leave an estate to their children than it was for them to buy that vacation home. The vacation home, they said, I could take it or leave it, right? So we had a conversation, and really it wasn't as important as leaving the estate. And the reason why is because Henry and Maddie's parents both left them some money. It got them out of a bind when they were in a bind. And so it was really important to them that they always wanted to leave money to their kids at the end of their life. And the vacation home, again, they could take it or leave it. So we looked at taking the vacation home out of the plan. The next goal we looked at was retirement age. So it was more important for them to spend $150,000 a year than it was for Henry to retire at 66. Henry said, I'm happy to wait until 70 if I have to, but I really want to spend $150,000 a year, and I really want that $25,000 a year travel budget. I'm not willing to give up the $25,000 a year travel budget or $150,000 a year expense budget just to retire at 66. I'm willing to work longer. So we said, great. Let's look at how the plan would work if we took out those two things. So let's move the retirement age to 67 instead of 66, and let's remove the vacation home and see how it works. So now that these things have been changed, the vacation home has been removed and retirement age has been pushed back by 1 year. Let's take a look and see how that makes a difference. So remember, if you're spending $150,000 a year and you're saving 120, that's a $270,000 swing by just waiting 1 more year to retire, because you're going to save another $120,000 and you're not going to spend 150. So let's take a look at what happens with those changes. So the Monte Carlo simulation provides an 81% probability of success. Now, this, of course, is within two standard deviations, or 95%, 95% of all possibilities, right? So there's still 5% or 2.5% on each end of the bell curve that's not accounted for here. But within 95% probability of success, they have a 81% chance of hitting their goals with those changes. So two small changes and they were able to hit their goals. And in this case, they weren't changes that made a big difference to them. So it's important to really understand what your priorities are what you're willing to give up, and what are your must-haves? What are your deal breakers? And then you could figure out what adjustments do you need to make in order to keep your must-haves, right? But then maybe the not so important, the take it or leave it's, right? Maybe those can be adjusted and you could still hit your retirement goals and you could hit all of your ideal goals without having to give up too much. And that's how you go into retirement without having unfulfilled expectations. I hope this video was helpful. I hope this example was helpful for you. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up below and subscribe and be on the lookout for more videos from this channel. Thank you.